Turning now to a political storm, if you will. President Biden standing firm, insisting he's not dropping out of the race for the White House, despite a growing number of Democrats now calling for him to do so. That decision will likely have a trickle-down effect for Democratic candidates down the ballot this year, especially for those in predominantly red states. There are 34 Senate seats up for grabs this year. 19 of them are held by Democrats, and all 435 House seats are up for re-election. Joining me now is James Golden, also known as Bo Snerdley, radio host at WABC, radio and author. Bo, thanks for joining us.
Quite welcome. How are you, Brett?
Doing all right this morning. I want to get your take on this first headline from over the weekend. A Philadelphia radio station that landed a post-debate interview with President Biden announced they're cutting ties with the host that interviewed the president, claiming that, they got pre-written questions from the White House. The station saying, that goes against their policies and, that they've now cut ties with that host. Somebody who works in radio yourself, what do you make of this? Another negative headline for the president.
Well, it's a negative headline. It's more of a negative headline for the radio host that used the questions that were supplied. You can't blame the White House for wanting to manage the communications. That's especially now with the trouble that they have seen and with the problematic press that has been coming about the press, not covering the problems of the White House all these many years. Now, the radio station management obviously was very unhappy with this. Cut ties, nice way to say they fired her. Yes, she's gone. Perhaps she'll end up at the Biden campaign. She seemed to do a good job. But my question is this a one-off? This does not just happen out of the blue. So how many other interviews is the White House conducting, not just with radio, but with all sorts of media where it's kind of a friends operation? Here, let me send you the questions that we're going to ask. Now, by the way, nothing wrong with identifying the topics that they're going to talk about with the president. They should do that. That's just good journalism. But when it gets down to here are the specific questions we'd like you to ask him, and from what I understand from reading the news accounts of it, the radio host used some of the questions, not all of them, and that was just poor judgment.
Right. And, to your point, I'm sure you've done interviews before where somebody says, hey, we'd like you to focus on this topic, but that doesn't necessarily mean you've got to follow it.
That's exactly right. But most of the time, in order to secure the interview, that's the way it works in the media. What do you want to talk about with the subject that you talk about? You have to have some kind of understanding as to why the interview is taking place in the first place. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for them to send questions and to use it goes back to, remember the debate where we learned later on that debate questions were actually put before, I think it was Hillary Clinton, yes. And there was a well-known television network was involved with that. That person left the network too. Apparently this is something that goes on and a lot of people right now are questioning. And they should question the media that they're receiving. How is it that for 4 years, people were aware, we know now that they were aware of Joe Biden's cognitive problems. Some of them deliberately withheld those stories. How do you engender any kind of trust with your viewership, with your readership? You know the truth, you're not telling the truth. This all goes to a much bigger problem that is taking place, this cozy relationship between this White House and their allies, frankly, in some of the mainstream press. I don't include this radio station in that. The management was outraged. Yeah, but to play devil's advocate, if I can, there have been a lot of calls from the press recently with these headlines coming out about President Biden staying in the race. A lot of people in the press calling on him to do more live interviews, get out there, seeming to push back on the White House a little bit. I do have to end it there, though. They're wrapping me for time. We've got a lot of breaking news to stay on top of this morning. But, Bo, thank you. Appreciate your perspective on this story.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.